Well, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome in from across the continent and beyond for another thrilling Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants broadcast. For those new to us, we are all about bringing conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms around the world, and everything we do goes to our YouTube channel. So if you want to check out this one or all our other programs, we've got like 4,000 of them. You can go there in 3 weeks, 3 years, anytime you want, and check out all sorts of really cool stories from the world's leading scientists and explorers. Now, before I dive in today, I have a quick housekeeping note that we have a Kahoot today. So between our talk and Q&A, we're going to have a little 4-question quiz to test your understanding and have a little bit of fun together. So if you want to pull up that game pin, that'll be in about 20-25 minutes. Today's also super exciting because it sort of epitomizes what we're all about in a nutshell. We started off the day live in Tasmania from a giant wooden tall ship doing a whole voyage around the world. I wrapped up a few hours ago with Derek Gow, who is rewilding a farm and bringing back wildlife to remote parts of the United Kingdom. We get the coolest speaker of all in just a minute, and I'll introduce her in a sec. And then we wrap up right after this with an astronaut from the Canadian Space Agency. So it is wild and so much fun. So thank you for joining us as we get to continue to showcase such cool people. Now, we are bringing back for the third time in like a month and a half, because she just keeps saying yes to us, which is really like it's her loss. It's Alysa McCall. She is the education lead at Polar Bears International, which means she gets to inspire and excite the world and kids like you with how cool one of the most amazing creatures on planet Earth is. If there's a better job than that, I don't know what it is. And we are thrilled to have her back to tell us a little bit more. Alysa, welcome back to the broadcast from Whitehorse, and take us away.
Great. Thank you so much, Jesse. It's so nice to be here with everyone today. Thank you for joining. I'm going to give a little presentation, and then I'm so excited to answer all your questions, as many as I can fit in for the day. So I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this. Yes, and as Jesse mentioned, so I am coming to you from Whitehorse in Yukon, Canada. I am on the traditional territory of the Kwanlin Dun First Nation and the Ta'an Council. I'm so grateful to live here. It's a beautiful place. It is cold. Last week we were in the minus 30s Celsius. We've got a lot of snow out there. I've got wool socks and slippers and a blanket on right now, but I'm staying warm because it's a little warmer this week, luckily. But where polar bears live, it's not always so warm, which we will talk about. So I work for a nonprofit organization called Polar Bears International. And our goal is to keep polar bears roaming the Arctic for a very long time. And we're working to accomplish this through a variety of ways. So we do research and we support research. We do education like this. We work with media. So if you see TV shows and movies and news articles, we want to make sure that the best information is getting out there and the best images and videos. And then advocacy. And that's kind of like speaking up for something that you care about. And for polar bears, they don't have a voice. So we're speaking up for them and on behalf of them to help us keep them in the Arctic for a long time. So we love polar bears. They are an incredible animal, and they have a lot of kind of categories that they win in. So they are the biggest bear in the world. They are the only marine bear. So they're a bear that's tied to the ocean. And they are the most carnivorous bear. And this goes hand in hand with their marineness. All the other bears we know of, there's 8 bears species in the world. 7 of them prefer to live on land, and this one prefers to live on the ocean. And that is because of its main prey, seals. Polar bears are the most carnivorous, like I said, but really they want to eat fat. So we kind of like to call them lipivores, which means fat eaters. Polar bears can eat over 100 pounds of blubber at one sitting. They require an insane amount of calories to keep going. They really are these kings of feasting and fasting. So they can go long periods of time without eating, but then when they do eat, they love to gorge themselves on seals. But they need the sea ice to get to the seals. So polar bears have a lot of adaptations to live out on the Arctic sea ice. They can't outswim a seal in the water very easily at all. So they really need the ice to sneak up on the seal. You can see this seal on the right. That's a bearded seal. They're big seals, and they will come out and rest on the ice, and polar bears can sneak up. Or this polar bear on the left, what it's doing, it's waiting by an air hole. So seals will swim underwater and come up for air, and the polar bear will wait there very patiently. They'll wait for 24 hours, barely moving, and then they'll pounce on that seal when it comes up for air and drag it out. So they're hoping to average about eating a seal a week when they're out on the ice, hopefully more, particularly in the spring when there's lots of seals to go around. So I'll say that, but then I should also say that polar bears will eat other things in parts of the Arctic, polar bears do come on land for long periods of time, and that's when we're seeing them do that fasting, the not eating. And particularly around Hudson Bay, which is where I work quite often, when polar bears are stuck on land, they're still going to eat other stuff. So this bear here is eating grass, and we watched this bear for quite a while this fall. He ate a lot of grass, but that would be like you maybe trying to live on iceberg lettuce. So if you were really hungry and all you had was iceberg lettuce, you could eat it and eat it and eat it, and it might fill your tummy for a little bit, but you're really not getting any calories or nutrition out of that. So the bears are kind of trying to fill their tummies till they can get back out on the ice when it freezes in the winter and go hunt those seals. They'll also follow their noses for whatever they can find, but ultimately they want to be eating those seals and getting that blubber. And this bear is showing off some nice adaptations for that. So of course their coat, their fur, is an adaptation. It's camouflaged to the sea ice, so it blends in with the ice, making it harder for seals to see them. Polar bears have two thick layers of fur. The one closest to their body is almost like a really woolly sweater, and the layer over top is longer, almost like raincoat. It's like a longer guard hair, and it's going to whisk that water away from the bear. So it keeps them nice and warm. They can withstand extremely cold temperatures. They've got that thick layer of body fat, which again, they get from eating seals. Over 90% of the blubber they eat goes directly onto their body in the form of fat. So they're highly, highly efficient at eating fat. And it's a good thing that humans aren't that efficient at eating fat. But they're much less efficient at eating those things like grasses and berries that would give more nutrition to black and brown bears, but not to polar bears. Also check out, I like this guy. So look at his paws. They are huge. They're like the size of dinner plates. And that's how we get these really heavy, big bears that can head out on the ice. They spread their weight over those giant paws. Also, you can check out his claws there. They're so sharp, maybe for a bit of traction, but also for grabbing slippery seals. You can see he's got a very kind of curved, smooth neck and face. There you go. It's so good for getting in and out of seal holes. Brown bears, their cousin grizzly bears, they have these really blocky heads that are not so well suited for being on the ice, but polar bears are very well adapted for this lifestyle. You can see, so this is an older male. You can see he's got scars on his face. Males don't live as long as females because they fight each other for mates in the spring. And so we get these scars on these adult males. Females are about half the size of males, and they'll live into their late 20s or potentially early 30s, rarely, but usually mid-late 20s. Males are going to live into their late teens, early 20s more often. So this was a nice guy we watched for a while this year. And quickly on moms and cubs, and again, I'm happy to answer questions after about this. So moms will have cubs about every 3 years, and the cubs will stay with their mom for up to about 2.5 years. A mom will have between 1 and 3 cubs usually that she'll raise up. And when the cubs are first born, their mother's milk is the fattiest milk of any animal we find on land. So it's over 30% fat. It would be like us drinking whipped cream. The cubs grow really quickly because of this, because of all those calories. So when a cub is born, it's only about a pound. It would easily fit in your hands. But in just a few months, that cub can be over 20 pounds. So if we think about that rate of growth, that's like the average human baby being about 7 pounds. And if you thought of a 3-month-old human baby being 140 pounds, that would be crazy. There's no way. So polar bears grow way more quickly than humans, and they have to, because they have to get ready to get on that ice with mom and start learning how to be polar bears, since they only have a limited amount of time with her. But moms are excellent at teaching their cubs how to navigate the ice, how to find seals, and how to live their lifestyle out there, which is a very unique lifestyle. And so this is where polar bears live. They do only live in the Arctic in the north. There are no polar bears in Antarctica. Polar bears and penguins do not meet in the wild. They are quite separated. Each one of these shapes you see is a different polar bear population. And actually this year we added one in Greenland. So now we have 20 polar bear populations across the Arctic. Canada has 2/3 of the world's polar bears, which is kind of special. We've got quite a few. And so polar bears have, wherever they live, they all need Arctic sea ice, but they all do face different obstacles or challenges. They have different patterns of sea ice that they get used to, slightly different prey species, though again, they're all out for blubber at the end of the day. These are blubber hunting ice bears at the end of the day, all of them. So when we talk about polar bears needing sea ice, ice, that's what we mean. But we do look kind of regionally to see what these bears need and what kind of pressures in terms of like shipping or humans or other things that they have going on. But all the 5 countries, Canada, Russia, Norway, Greenland, and the United States, we all work together to conserve polar bears, research them, and protect them. So Arctic sea ice is critical to polar bears. That's how they get their food. It's their dinner plate. But Arctic sea ice isn't only for polar bears, and there's other reasons we care about the sea ice. It's a really special habitat. We like to say that Arctic sea ice is to the ocean what soil is to the forest. So the sea ice is similar to soil in that the sea ice is growing the plants. Plants are growing inside this type of ice. It's really special. So we've got algae growing in the sea ice, and that algae feeds the other little creatures, the diatoms. Well, the diatoms are on the same level as the algae, but they're feeding the copepods. Those are feeding the fish. The fish are feeding the seals and the whales, and the polar bears are eating those seals. And of course, humans live across the Arctic, and they also need Arctic sea ice to travel on and to access food. So sea ice is really critical for life in the Arctic. But even more than that, I know we have students joining us from all over the world today. And no matter where you are right now, whether you're in Canada or the US or anywhere else, Arctic sea ice impacts your life. Even though we might not see it every day or we might feel very disconnected, Arctic sea ice has a positive effect on our entire planet. Because it's so large and white, it reflects a lot of sunlight away from Earth. And in that way, it helps cool down our whole planet and regulate all of our climate systems. So we also like to call sea ice Earth's air conditioner. So it's cooling us down, it's providing life in the Arctic, it's letting polar bears hunt their food. So Arctic sea ice is pretty cool and it's pretty important, and we want to keep it around for a long time. Why we're concerned about Arctic sea ice is because we know we are losing some of it as our world is warming. So what's happening is that, humans are burning fossil fuels. This is coal, oil, and natural gas. And when we burn fossil fuels, we release heat trapping emissions into the atmosphere. If we've got a regular amount of emissions, carbon in the atmosphere, that's okay. It traps heat. Those emissions hang on to heat so the heat can't escape. It's like a heat trapping blanket. In regular amounts, that's okay because the Earth needs some heat so that we can all live. But we are releasing too many emissions, so we're thickening this heat trapping blanket around Earth, and heat's not escaping our planet like it used to. So that's why we're concerned, because of course, when it gets warmer outside, ice melts, and there's no arguing about the melting point of ice. When it hits a certain temperature, it's going to melt. And so if we lose Arctic sea ice, we will start to lose polar bears. We know if we did absolutely nothing to change anything about our energy systems, we could lose most of the world's polar bears by the end of the century. So in the coming decades, we know though that we can change this. So right now, polar bears are considered vulnerable globally. So they are at risk of climate change. But notice here, they are not endangered yet. We still have about 26,000 polar bears or so across the Arctic. We still have time, and humans are working on changing our energy system. So we do have a lot of hope for polar bears. We know exactly what we need to do, and there's people working on what we need to do for polar bears and their Arctic sea ice home. We need to shift our energy to cleaner energy, so away from those fossil fuels and toward more things like wind and solar energy. We can be a lot more efficient when we do burn fuel. And the biggest thing that we can all do is talk about it. And you can do this no matter what age you are. If you're old enough to vote, this includes voting for leaders that care about where our energy comes from. And if you're too young to vote, you can still talk to your teachers and parents and friends. You can ask questions. You can look into, what's your community doing? And you have a lot of power. Young voices have a lot of power with the adults in their lives. And we've seen some schools do some really cool stuff, like get electric school buses or take a whole bus off the road after redesigning routes and, looking into where their energy comes from. So there's things we can all do energy-wise. And then in the meantime, we're going to keep learning more about polar bears. and what they need. And there's a lot of things we still need to know about the bears. We are working with Indigenous knowledge holders around the north. So many, cultures, including the Inuit, have lived with polar bears for thousands of years, and they have a lot of knowledge, and we need to be working with the communities to understand what they're seeing, what they need, what they know about polar bears. We're also working on denning, so protecting moms and cubs in their dens when they're so vulnerable. We're looking at human-bear interactions, which are increasing across the north. So polar bears are spending more time on land. They're coming into contact with more people. We want to protect polar bears and people as this continues. And also understanding the genetics of the bears, that can help us get at more what populations are really vulnerable, where should we really be putting our resources to protect polar bears, and then tracking. And if we track the bears, we can better understand where and why they're moving. So you can check out our polarbearsinternational.org bear tracker. This is a bit of an older screenshot. If you go there right now, you can see where the bears are right now. So some are just starting to move onto the ice. There's still many on the coast kind of waiting for the ice to get solid enough, but they'll be heading out on Hudson Bay very, very soon. And it's really neat to see where they all go. They all kind of choose different things. And then we're also pioneering new tracking technology. So on our bear tracker, you see collared adult female polar bears with GPS collars. We're also working on fur tags, and fur tags will be less invasive. They can go on younger bears and adult male bears. And so we're testing these out and having some success. So it's always important in science and in life to just continue improving and doing the best we can for the animals. So we're always working on doing things better and more effectively. And this picture is taken outside of Churchill, Manitoba, where we do a lot of our work, the polar bear capital of the world. This human-bear interactions piece is really critical, which I mentioned before. We feel like if we want to see polar bears roam in the Arctic for a very long time, and we know that those polar bears are going to come into contact with more people, we have a serious obligation to help support and protect those people that now have to live with the world's largest land carnivore more often. So we're doing a few things there. We're testing and developing a BEARDAR early warning system. So seeing if we can use radar to detect polar bears coming into communities and give people warnings. So that would be one thing we're working on. We're also simply working on providing more tools for people. So on the left here, you see bear spray, cracker shells, and flares, things that we encourage people to carry on them when they're in polar bear country. So having ways to scare away polar bear. And then on the right-hand side, this doesn't seem very exciting, but it's quite critical. This is a garbage bin, a bear-proof garbage bin. So this has helped a ton where we've put these out. We have many in Churchill, Manitoba, and this prevents polar bears from getting rewarded. These bears are so smart. If they get rewarded, so if they're looking for food in a town and they get something that tastes good, you can fly that bear out of town and drop it somewhere and it will come right back and go to the exact same spot. They're so smart. They know they have to be out on the ice. If you think of that, they really have to be, thinking about where their food's coming from and checking out the good spots that got them calories, and they're the same when they're on land. They're going to go back to what tastes good again and again and again. So if we can lock up garbage, lock up attractants, even if the bear smells something good, if it doesn't get a reward or something tasty, it's more likely to go on its way. So effective waste management and attractant management is critical for polar bears and bears broadly. I'm sure any of you that live with bears at all also have some sort of waste management system. So we're working on improving waste management across the north, and again, supporting communities, providing these things, seeing what works for them, and just seeing how we can help. We also work with kids across the north. So this is just one example of a coloring book. There's a lot of kids that live with polar bears, and in the summer particularly, when you want to be going out and just playing on the playground and the weather's pretty good, there's children that will need to keep an eye out for polar bears. So how can we talk to them in a way that's not scary but empowering, and how can we keep more people safe? Polar bears are not as aggressive as brown bears generally. They're not, there's this kind of myth that they're a man hunter and they're out hunting humans, and they're not doing that on purpose, but they are a predator and things happen. Someone was killed by a polar bear this year in northern Canada. And just a few days ago, there was another attack in northern Ontario in Canada. And that person is going to be okay. And that does happen. People can fight off polar bears, but they need to be kind of prepared and have their community around them and have tools to help them. So we want to just make sure people are aware that this is happening, and we want to keep as many polar bears in the wild for as long as we can, and that means keeping people safe along with them. So this is this is just a clip from last fall. This kind of shows you just how fun polar bears can be. So they are a predator. They are dangerous, but they're amazing, and they're interesting, and they're funny, and they're intelligent, and they make a living on one of the wildest habitats in the world, Arctic sea ice. This, of course, is where they are in the fall. We see groups of polar bears hanging out together at this time of the year in Churchill, Manitoba, waiting for that sea ice. So this is all males here having a good time, kind of playing, checking each other out. We see them lay next to each other, interact, and it's just a fascinating thing to watch. And you can see more polar bear footage and other wildlife at explore.org, is one of our partners. So we really want to keep polar bears around for a long time, and we know that we can. And part of why we know that we can is that there's all these youths all around the world who are just so passionate and inspiring, and they help kind of keep us motivated. And with your help, we will, protect Arctic sea ice and protect our own futures along with it. So thank you so much for your time today. I'm very excited to see what kind of questions you have. There's always a bunch of incredible questions, and I'll hand it back over to Jesse.
Thank you so much, Alysa. That's spectacular. And we're going to make sure to cover the new fur tag, because I've never seen anything like that. And that's super neat from a conservation perspective. So if no one asks, I'll sneak that in as a question. Before we dive in with our questions, we are going to do our Kahoot together. So a lot of you are already in this, which is great. A lot of you are new to Kahoot. So if you are new to this, the faster you answer, the more points you get. And what you win is Alysa and I's everlasting respect. So that's pretty cool. You don't get that every day. So feel free to chime in with a game pin 288-766. We're going to do this in the next few minutes together. And then Miss Riabel's class, we're going to head to you first for a question, so you can get ready. YouTubers, start sharing your questions anytime you'd like. We'll take as many as we can. And live classes, we're probably going to get through at least 2 rounds. So get those thinking caps on, and we can't wait to hear from you. I'm going to get us underway. And Alysa, if you want to help us out with any hints in any of these, you know the drill. You can give us some pointers maybe as we get close to the end of each question. All right. Drum roll. 3, 2, 1. Question 1. Polar bears are the main predator of penguins. I mean, we talked about them eating seals. We talked about them going for that garbage. Alysa, you're... Penguins live in the Antarctic. They are in the bottom of the world, and polar bears are on the top of the world. So they never actually meet. The northernmost penguin stops at the Galapagos Islands in the equator, and then after that, there's nothing for a long time until you get to those polar bears. All right, question 2. Hopefully that didn't cut out too much. I know my computer is being a little finicky. So polar bears have actually been observed hunting whales. True or false? Alysa, do you want to give us a hint for this one?
I'll say polar bears will look for calories wherever they can find them.
Ooh, that's subtle. That's nice. I like that. 50 of you in the Kahoot. That's amazing. What do we think? I think a lot of people are going to get this wrong. Oh, most of you thought false. No, Alysa, they've pulled out beluga whales. Are there any others? Do they hunt narwhals as well, or just the belugas?
They would sure try, especially young, small ones. Yep, they'll go for it. They're not always successful, but it happens.
So if you ever get the chance to go to Churchill, Manitoba, Alysa invited me up a few years back, and I got to see polar bears and tons of beluga whales, which is like a whole other broadcast we could do, because it's one of the most magical places in the world up there. And yes, polar bears will hunt them and pull them out of the ice, which is absolutely unreal. All right, what does that do to our leaderboard? Swift Cheetah has our lead, barely over Red Echidna. Question 3, here we go. The polar bear capital of the world is in which country? I'll give you a hint. We talked about it a lot today, and it's where Alysa and I both are. So Russia, Norway, United States, or Canada? I gotta say, whenever we do this question, I actually feel like a swell of pride. Like it's like a weird patriotism. Like, yeah, good for us.
Yeah, it is.
All
good.
right, Katie Anderson. Yes, most of you got Canada. I know we have quite a few Americans today, and you've got a lot of great things going for you. You're a wonderful country, but we beat you for polar bears. So there you are. Let's see. Does that change? Oh, it changes our leaderboard radically. Dazzled Shark takes our lead with one more question to go. All right, and then Three Repels class, we're coming to you, Miss Barajas. You'll be second. Polar bears can swim for how long? A few seconds, a few minutes, a few hours, or a few days. We talked about them being the sea bear, a maritime bear. What do we think? Alysa, any hints?
They don't really do anything in small amounts. So yeah, they've got some good endurance. I'll say that.
I gotta say, I ask for a lot of hints from a lot of people, and yours are the best. That is great. So most of you thought a few hours, which is a really good guess. No, polar bears. What's the longest a polar bear has been observed swimming?
I think it was up to like about 9 days or something. It was
9 days
Yeah.
straight, which is unreal. We could not do that, especially in the waters that the polar bears are swimming in. They're very well adapted to their environment. So let's see. Fuzzy Fox is third. Second is Friendly Mouse. And first, which is a polar bear for some reason. And first, for all the marbles, drum roll, please. Dazzled Shark wins the thing. If you are any of those folks, let us know who you are in the chat. Way to go, everybody. And let's dive in with questions. So, Mr. Pell's class, come on in. Hi, everybody. Welcome in. Hi. Do you have any polar bear questions for Alysa?
All right, Savannah. Listening.
How long have you seen a polar bear swim for?
Yeah. You
So-
personally.
Yeah, me personally, not too long. I've seen them just when humans are around at that time of year, they'll kind of do short little swims just to get away or across the river, maybe. So when we get really good data to watch these long swims, it comes from collar data. So the GPS is telling us it would be really hard to follow a polar bear for that long in the water. But we also know in terms of diving that the longest dive we know of was recorded at 3 minutes and 10 seconds. So it held its breath for over 3 minutes. And I definitely cannot do that either. So yeah.
You can't. Kate Winslet did it for 7 minutes for Avatar 2. I believe if you put your mind to this, we'll get back to you on this, okay, in the future?
Yeah.
But I'm so glad you mentioned the tracker data. And I mean, this is one of those things that like you threw into the presentation and it's neat, but like really think about it. Like you guys can go right now and go to the Polar Bears International website and like track polar bears that we're following right now. Like that is so cool that we have that capacity. And it's because Alysa is so awesome and her team is so cool. So there you go. I will pass along the link for you to do that after we're done today. Miss Barajas, come on in California. Hey, folks, take us away.
How long can polar bears last without eating?
Ooh.
So the longest time we know of for a polar bear to go without eating is 8 months. So those are the pregnant female polar bears. They get pregnant in the spring. They come onto land in the summer. And this is around Hudson Bay. And then they'll go into dens. So they're in dens right now if they're pregnant. And they're going to give birth in the next few weeks. They're going to nurse their cubs for a few months in the den. And they're not going to get back out onto the sea ice until about March to go eat. And they're going to want to eat a lot since they've been on land for almost 8 months. So that's the longest fast we know of in the animal kingdom. It's a very long. Yeah.
That's incredible. There's some reptiles that can go a really long time, but they also have quite different bodies. So the fact that a mammal can do that, something like us for 8 months.
Right. Yeah. I should say mammal. Yeah. It's a
Very
lot.
cool.
Yeah. Living off their own body fat. Mm-hmm.
By the way, I don't know if you caught it, but before the broadcast, I was saying to our California class that it's like, 31 Fahrenheit here and it's 50 plus there. And they were alarmed at that. And so kids, negative 20 Fahrenheit where Alysa is right now. So it's like, bone chilling. I'd actually love it to be that because winter should be cold. Our third grade steward crew, we're coming to you, and then Division 2 drink water next. Come on in, third graders. Hello.
Go ahead.
My name's Sarah from the third grade.
Speak up.
Hi, my name's Sarah from the third grade at Stewart School in Richmond, PA. My question is, how do humans interact with polar bears if they see you as prey?
How should humans interact with polar bears if they see you as prey? That's a great question. So I say don't act like prey. So there's this idea that people can fight off black bears, but if you see a polar bear, it's too late. And that's not true. So I want to change the saying and make it whether it's white, brown, or black, always fight back. So if you ever were in a situation where you saw a polar bear, in a perfect world, you have bear spray on you or bangers, or you have somebody with you. But no matter what, you fight back. So you make a lot of noise, you use the tools you have. You can throw rocks, you can throw sticks, you make yourself not act like prey. And there's been many instances where people have been able to fight off polar bears, and often we see polar bears get scared away in Churchill. There's a polar bear alert team in Churchill, and their whole job is to scare away polar bears. So they can definitely be scared away. Polar bears they're not territorial. And because they're so carnivorous, they're less likely to want to get injured doing something that doesn't get them food. So brown bears and black bears, they can just like forage and eat berries and stuff, and they can get enough food. Polar bears need to take care of themselves, so they're less likely to want to get attacked. So that means just act big and strong and loud, and hopefully you're able to scare that polar bear away. So those are kind of some tips we give people if you're up in polar bear country.
Absolutely. You mentioned the polar bear attack just a few days ago, and that's how that ended. The man jumped in the polar bear's back. I mean, it was a, wild scenario, and he's fortunately going to be all right. But if you're ever in a life or death situation with any animal, do fight.
Yes.
Don't just lie down and assume
Totally.
that.
Yeah.
Great question, guys. All right. Division 2, drink water, folks. Come on in and take us away. Hey, guys, unmute.
Hello.
Come,
My name is
Hey.
Lauren. The question is, how long did the oldest polar bear live?
Nice.
Great question. The oldest one we know of, she was a zoo polar bear. She was born in the wild and brought to the zoo because she was causing trouble with her cub in Churchill. So because she was in a zoo, she was a little more pampered and taken care of. Her name was Debbie. She lived until she was 42 years old, and that's currently the record.
Wild. Very cool.
Mhm.
All right. A Richmond Rose Public School joining us in Richmond Hill, Miss Burrows' class. They want to know, what's the largest polar bear you've ever seen?
Ooh, for me, it would be an adult male that was about 1,500 pounds. So you can kind of round up your students in your class and see how many students that would take to make up 1,500 pounds. But it was a very, very large polar bear. The record holder, I believe, was a male out in Alaska several decades ago who weighed in at about 2,200 pounds. But that was like unusually large. They're usually not quite that big. Yeah,
Well,
but about 1,500 is pretty huge.
1,500. For most of our classes, if you're a group of 20 kids and you're in grade 3, that's your entire class. That's all of you put together in one bear, which is wild. So think about that. You're all one big bear. If you want to act like that when this broadcast is done, you have our permission. Maybe not your teachers, but keep that in mind.
Poor teacher.
Miss Hunter's class, Coralie wants to know how fast populations are decreasing.
Yeah, that's a good question. It depends. So again, there's 20 populations, and some are stable and doing well where there's good sea ice. Others are declining. So we know that near Churchill, where we've talked about a lot today, that population has declined about 50% since the 80s. So we used to have about 1,200 bears there. Now there's closer to 600. I will say when we talk about polar bears declining, we're not saying, oh, these bears are starving to death or anything. We're not seeing kind of these big drops. Mostly what's happening is that as bears lose access to food, it's harder to have babies and to get those babies raised up. And so what we see over time is this pressure on moms and cubs, and they're slowly just adding fewer cubs to the population. So it does happen over a period of time where we see declining populations, largely due to fewer cubs making it into adulthood. So it takes a while. Yeah.
Nuanced answer, and it's nice. I think on your site, there's a way to track polar bear populations globally, or do you have info on that? I think so.
Yeah, we should have information on all the populations, and you can also check out, it's called the Polar Bear Specialist Group, and it's an international body, which we are involved in, but they're a separate body, and they have all the information on every single population on their website, and they update it as much as they can. Okay, well, I think maybe, there we go.
We're back. Sorry. My computer hates me today. We're going to do a second round of questions. Apologies for that little delay, everybody. Mr. Bell's class, come on back in and take us away with another one. We're going to do 3 more questions and a couple more from YouTube if we get them, and then we'll wrap up from there. Hey, folks.
All right. Callie,
How many types of species are polar bears? Like, how many are there?
Ooh, are there different species of polar bear, different groups of them, or just the one?
Great question. Right now, there's just the one. So it's a good question because even brown bears kind of have these subgroups, but right now we just have one group of polar bears. But as we get better at looking at their genetic data, it's possible that we'll end up with a couple special groups anyway that are a little bit different. But right now, just one species for sure, and just kind of one type, and they could all technically breed with each other if they needed to. We do know polar bears can mate with brown bears. It happens occasionally, and they can have growler bears together, but those growler bears are not a very good bear. They're not some super bear or anything. It's a bear that there's only been a few of them in the wild, and they're not well suited to ice or land. And they're apparently a little bit grumpy. So we're not going to see a lot of growler bears in the future, but they are out there occasionally. Yeah.
I also love, if I'm not mistaken, from the last time we did a program, you talked about it's like one male or one female that's produced like all the growler bears. They're just they're interested in the others for some reason.
Yeah, she had interesting taste, made it with a couple different brown bears in her life and had those growler bears. So it's rare occurrences. Yeah, kind of funny, I guess.
Very funny.
Not a lot to choose from out there sometimes.
Oh, sorry. That's a funny way of thinking about it. Ms. Baraz, we're going to head back to you for a sec. Division 2, we're going to come to you last after a YouTube question in between, but come on back in Oxnard. Hi, guys.
Have a polar bear encountered a black bear before?
Ooh. Yes, polar bears have encountered black bears. So it's not super common since the ranges can be a little different. But again, we talked about this place a lot today, but in Churchill, Manitoba, Churchill actually has all 3 North American bear species, so polar, black, and brown. The story I heard is that the polar bear chased the black bear off pretty quickly. So I don't think they hang out together, but there's spots in the world where they will see each other.
Yeah, and that makes sense because, I mean, I'm sure you've seen it many times over Alysa's shoulder is this polar bear skull, which is just monstrous. Like, there's such a huge animal compared to a black bear. Black bears can be like the size of a big dog, and polar bears are very much not the size. If you have a dog the size of a polar bear, you probably have a polar bear by accident because they don't. Yeah, keep that in mind. All right, quick YouTube one from Ms. Burrows' class, and then we're going to wrap up with our Division 2 folks. They have a great question from there. How does bear spray work? You keep talking about it. What's the deal?
Great question. So it's in a pressurized can, and it's very, very concentrated, like pepper spray, basically is what it is. So it shoots out extremely fast. So even if it's windy outside, it works. And polar bears have such a sensitive nose, highly sensitive nose, that the idea is to get them sprayed in the nose and eyes. So you have to wait till the bear's a couple meters away from you. Bears, when they're going to attack, they kind of come with their head down. So you want to spray kind of low, a couple meters ahead, and have the bear walk into the spray. And it absolutely irritates the heck out of their nose. And that bear is going to turn and get out of there. It's very effective on polar bears. We've seen firsthand spraying polar bears works and it gets them away. But one thing to note about bear spray with any bear species, it's effective. But after that bear goes away, it may come back because once it's sprayed, that pepper spray becomes an attractant. So it hurts their face, but once it settles, it smells interesting. So bears actually might come in. So you need to spray the bear and then get out of there. That's the trick.
I've never heard that before. That's fantastic. I guess the one analogy for people, like, we're very visual based. So if someone shines a flashlight in your eyes from a few inches away, you have to do this. You sort of retreat. And so same with the bears, very smell focused, one of the best noses in the entire animal kingdom by a good margin. So if you're inundating that, that's a good way to stop them. Great question, guys. Yeah. All right. I'm going to say very briefly, and I will email your teachers this, polarbearsinternational.org, at Polar Bears International. They've got amazing social media pages, so much more there. And if you want to see more broadcasts with Alysa, including this one, you can head to our YouTube channel and do that. So I'll be sure to send that along when we're done the program. But let's wrap up with our drink water, folks. And then when we're done, Alysa, you can stick around with me after we're done for just a minute. But hello, welcome back, Division 2.
My name is Evan, and how much teeth does polar bears have?
Yeah, how many teeth?
I believe it's 42 teeth. So they've got the big canines out front, and then you can kind of see this guy. He's got a gap there, and then he's got some molars. The molars are sharper than brown bear molars. So, because they don't do as much grinding, but the teeth are so sharp, and this gap, that's perfect for a seal skull. So it's really well suited for pulling those seals out of the water. And one fun fact about teeth as well is that if we don't know how old a polar bear is, they have a tiny little tooth behind their big canine, and we can pop that tooth out. They don't need it. And we can cut it in half and count the rings like a tree. Because polar bears have this feasting and fasting cycle, they have ringed teeth. So cutting it in half and counting the rings will tell us how old a polar bear is. So they do have very special teeth.
Cool. Also, the one thing that I love in this job is that I get to work with a lot of biologists who take absolute delight, and their face lights up when they're like, it's the perfect size to fit a seal skull in there. So thank you for that in my day. Every time, every single time. It's great. Alysa, before we wrap up today and bring in all our kids to say a big thank you and farewell as always, is there any last message you want to leave with our classrooms today before that, just about polar bears or your work?
Yeah, we love polar bears. We want them to stick around for a long time, and we know we can do that. And whatever we do for polar bears is good for people too. And that's really our core message, is that if we want a stable future for them, that means a good future for us as well. So thank you for everything you're already doing, for all your passion, for all your interest. Just keep asking questions and learning. It doesn't need to be always about polar bears. There's lots of other cool stuff out there, but the more we learn, the better we can do for our own selves as well. So yeah, thank you everyone for your time today. Great questions, super fun as always.
Fantastic, particularly this group. You guys did a really nice job. So thank you for your interest, passion, everything. And what we do to wrap up every show, all our classes, I'm going to bring you in to say thank you and farewell. So Ms. Rappel's class, Ms. Barra's class, Division 2, thank you so much, everybody. Have a wonderful day.